guy did it to him. So he took a picture of it.
I'm so glad to see everybody here today, because that means we're in a room full of people that appreciate the gentleman that we have with us today. We're in the company of heroes today, and I very much look forward to introducing you to them. Before I turn the microphone over to our featured speaker today, I want to invite our Managing Director, Mr. Fred Bell, up to the stage. Folks, I need you to understand that our Tuskegee Airmen that are with us here today, they're not only very special guests and speakers, we consider them part of our family. And Fred, what more can you say about these gentlemen?
Well, I'm standing between you and them, so it's going to be brief. But the one thing I want to remind you is we have an opportunity here. We're a living history museum. Imagine if you went back to the Gettysburg Address with Lincoln at the dedication of Gettysburg, or some of these historical events. You're at something like this, that today. These men are national treasures, and they give of their time freely. They do it without asking. They show up. My buddy over there, anytime, and Rusty, anytime we need them, and they are true national treasures. Get to know them, burn this time in your memory, tell your kids about it, because it is time that will not come again. And one of the things that we need to do, and I said it many times, is things like Tuskegee and what happened there, and that these men had to go through the grueling fight to be able to defend us, and what they had to go through to be able to get to do that should not happen, and it should never happen again. And as we talk about that, and we just honored the A-team on the ground in Vietnam, which is going to be part of our hangar, the fact that those men will tell you they weren't allowed to be able to walk back into the United States in their uniforms at the end of the war. They were told, this is the Vietnam War, do not wear your uniform off post. Those types of things, we have to be a society that separates the men from the mission and honors the men. And if people are willing to defend our way of life, we should honor them at all costs. And so today, without any delay, you are a national treasure. I'm surprised you're not wrapped in foam or something. But I'm going to introduce Rusty. Rusty?
Can you hear me in the back? I guess so. A healthy good afternoon to all of you. Before I start the program, this is a special day for us here. I would like for all of you to recognize my good friend Bob Friend's 96th birthday today. So we'll please get up and sing happy birthday. At the end of the presentation, we're going to have a birthday party for Bob back in the hangar. Let's see if I can get started. I sat down long enough to get tired. Today I'm going to share with you the legend and the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen experience. Some of you have been here so many times, you have probably seen this particular presentation. But those of you who haven't, welcome. I'm going to begin by taking us to the beginning. In 1925, the Army, having had many discussions with the community about the utilization of what we called Negroes in those days, decided to do a study, a feasibility study on the utilization of Negroes in the military service. They did so, and they completed their report, and they reported it. It so happened July 7th, 1925, in New Orleans, Louisiana, which happened to be 2 weeks before I was born. It happened in the Federal Building on Canal Street, 6 blocks from the Charity Hospital where I was born. So I have a close association with this report. Hey, that works. To begin with, when they finished the report and they gave it, they came up with, do something, there we go. They came up, we just took a paragraph out of the report itself. Negroes lack the intelligence, the courage, and the manual skills to fly combat aircraft. Now, I'd like for you to keep that thought in mind because I'm going to come back to it just a little bit later on. The next decade or so, the stigma of this report stayed with us particularly. Not very much we could do about it, but in the middle of the 30s, 1935, the war was raging in Europe, and the Congress of the United States decided they would have to make some preparations. They held a conference in the Congress. A general by the name of Billy Mitchell was probably the most outspoken person, and he noted to the Congress that air power would play a significant role in all future engagements. For once, Congress was listening, and they did something about it. They rather commissioned the Civil Aeronautics Administration to institute what is called CPTP, which is a civilian flying training program at various colleges and universities around the country. And what this was in your senior year at a college, if you were physically able, and you chose to, you could join the program, which would be paid for. At the end of your senior year, when you graduate, you would have the equivalent of a private pilot's license. Now, that was really a beautiful program. For one exception, it didn't include us. And we recognized that, and we decided to make some noise and to protest. So we had a lot of help in doing so. We had a federal judge by the name of William Hastings. We had Paul White of the NAACP, A. Philip Randolph of the Pullman Porters Union. We had the publishers of all the newspapers. Anyway, we made enough noise that Congress decided it wasn't worth fighting over, so they decided to include us in the CPT program. 5 predominantly black schools in the South were contracted to provide the CPT training. The first year was the 1939-1940 school year. 100 African Americans enlisted in the program. At the end of the school year, 95 had successfully completed the program. Now, 95% is not really a bad number, so we'll accept that one. So we go from there. Then we hit our next hurdle. The purpose of this program was, when these young men graduated, they had a choice of going to continue their post-education, going to law school, medical school, going out with their accounting or engineering or teaching degree, or they had a possibility of joining any of the air forces for pilot training, the Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard, and the Marines. Once again, this was a good idea, beautiful idea, except it didn't include us. So one more time, we started the battle of trying to get equal opportunity. Well, it went along. We still had Walter White. We still had Judge Hastings was now assistant to the Secretary of War. We had A. Philip Randolph again. We had all the publishers for the newspapers. But this time we had a special voice. A senator from Missouri named Harry Truman joined the fray. So we had a pretty good group of people speaking for us. However, this was an election year, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt was concerned about giving us something that might alienate the South and he would lose the vote. So he procrastinated. The check was in the mail, the school was going to start soon, all sorts of things, but nothing really happened. In January of 1941, an engineering graduate from Howard University by the name of Yancey Williams tried to join the Air Corps, and he was rejected. So with the help of the NAACP legal fund, he filed a suit against the federal government, a discrimination suit. against the federal government. Now this was tough love because this was a suit the government could not win because of Title 18, which guaranteed us separate but equal everything, accommodations. They were going to lose this suit. So while I was in court in January, another event took place. As some of you are old enough probably to remember, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, had infantile paralysis. We know it today as polio. Well, he had lost the use of both of his legs. He and the First Lady heard that there was a clinic down in Georgia that had developed some therapy for that affliction. So Mrs. Roosevelt decided to go down and look in on this clinic down there. It was Warm Springs, Georgia, I suppose. And she did, went down there and she did her business. When she was through, she decided, in her words, she was going to go over to Tuskegee and look in on these colored flyers, which she did. Gathered up her entourage and away they went across the Georgia border into Alabama. And she went to what was then the CPT training program for Tuskegee Institute, a place called Bolton Field, big square green field where they did the CPT training. She met probably the mentor of black aviation, a fellow by the name of Charles Anderson. We call him Chief. Bob will remember that. Everybody called him Chief. For all of his life, we called him Chief. When he died, we called him Chief. Well, she met Chief Anderson, and they talked a little while. And then Mrs. Roosevelt decided she wanted to go flying with Chief Anderson. Well, you can imagine the Secret Service went bananas. There was no way they were going to let the First Lady of the nation get into a little Piper Cub with a black fighter, with a black pilot in it. But if you know or read anything about Mrs. Roosevelt, you know the lady had a mind of her own. Nobody told her what she could or could not do. So she got in the airplane with Chief Anderson and they went off flying. Now this is a painting. This is not a photograph. This is a painting created by a local artist here who does all of the painting, everything you see around here, Stan Stokes. Much of what you see in my presentation will be some of it will be photographs, but most of it is going to be paintings created by Stan. Anyway, Mrs. Roosevelt, she came down, they landed safely to the relief of the Secret Service, and she said her thanks and her goodbye to Chief, and she took off and she went back to Washington. Well, we don't know for sure, but we suspect that Mrs. Roosevelt did what wives do so well. She went back to Washington and she told Franklin, you better find a place to teach these people how to fly. So in about 2 weeks, we heard he signed an executive order creating a separate but equal flying facility. I don't think he decided the place. I think the Army Air Corps decided the place. So they chose Tuskegee, Alabama to put this field. Well, right away things began to happen. An engineering firm by the name of McKissick was contracted to build this field. And they started right away. Bought 2,500 acres in the forest, chopped down all the trees, and they built the airfield. In the meantime, they started a range of training for school. They went into the infantry and they found a captain by the name of Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. Now he had graduated from West Point. His story, I won't start to tell you the whole story here because it's not long. But he graduated from West Point. He was 36 in a class of 273 to begin with. All of his 4 years at the academy, no one spoke to him except in the personal business. They took a code, all the cadets took a code not to speak to him. He lived by himself, he lived a very lonely life. But he was a very intelligent, very smart man, and he did his thing. They went into the Army, and they picked Captain Davis out, thinking they would need a leader for this group. But B.O. wasn't particularly wild about flying. He wanted to be a soldier. But he did what military people do. You do as you're told, and so he did. He came to Tuskegee. And the first class started sometime in the spring of 1941. They went through the one-year program, they went through the program, and they graduated in March of 1942. The first class graduated. There were 13 people entered the class, 5 of them successfully completed the class. The TAF, the Tuskegee Army Airfield, was now in business. Let me give you a little insight into what our venue was like there. First of all, we had a state-of-the-art field. Everything on the field we needed was there. Our barracks were well built, neat and clean. We had 3 runways. You could land in any direction you wanted to. We had our own medical facility. We had our own theater, our church. We had an athletic field. We had recreation facilities. We had everything we could possibly want in that field. We had a white commanding officer, base commander by the name of Noel Parrish. Noel Parrish was as good as we could get. He did not allow us to be humiliated or abused in any fashion. If you wanted to get kicked off that field, say something that you shouldn't have, and you would not have been there. I can thank Noel Parrish. We honor him to this day. So, in that effect. Our training, all of our primary instructors were civilian, African-American civilians, out of the CPT program. They were very good at training, as Bob will attest to. We got very good training. Our basic and advanced instructors were white officers. And originally, it was thought that these were a bunch of misfits sent down to Siberia, which is not the case. Every one of these men volunteered to come down there and to train us. And they were as dedicated to our success, basically, as we were. So for that part, we didn't have too much of a problem. The problems we had everything. We had most points were good, but we did have 2 problems. The first one was we were in a hostile neighborhood. The officers could leave the field, but the cadets could not because of the hostility in the neighborhood. It just wasn't safe for us to go out. So for 12 months, I was restricted to either the campus for 6 months or to the airfield for 6 months. It was not a big problem. The next problem we had, when the first group of airmen came in, the qualifications when Bill and the first group of 13 came in, the qualifications were you had to be 21 years old, a college graduate, and not married. Well, there weren't too many people that, would go beyond that particular or would fit that particular description. So they weren't, the Air Corps was not overloaded with applicants. However, in December of 41, Pearl Harbor, and immediately after, in January, Congress declared war. Now we have draft, we have conscription. The requirements were lowered to be 18 years old, a high school education, pass the physical, and pass the test, and you were in. Well, this created a problem for the Air Corps, because now instead of having 15, 12, 8 people, they had 80 or 90 applying for each class. They didn't have any intentions of having that many in the beginning, so they didn't really know what to do with them. So they instituted what is called the quota system. Now, we weren't supposed to know this, but the quota system was such that at the end of each phase, the instructors were only allowed to pass so many through that stage. Wow. So at the end of the program, at graduation, there would be no more than 20 men in single engine graduating. This created a little bit of a problem for them too, because now they were turning back a whole lot of people, a lot of guys that could be pilots. So Bob's class was the first class that instituted the multi-engine training. So now we had 20 single engine pilots could graduate, and 15 of the twin engine pilots could graduate. Well, this was a hardship on us. We kind of figured it out, even though no one would really tell us that. I'm going to depart for a minute this has very little to do with the Tuskegee Airmen legend and legacy. This is all about me. The lady on the right is my aunt, the lady on the left is my mother. This is my graduation, December 28, 1944. Tell you about this lady. When I was like 6 years old, my father got ill and could no longer stay with the family, and he left. My mother was saddled with 5 kids, 2 through 6, down in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the heart of the Depression. Things could not have been tougher for her. She worked 2 and 3 jobs, doing everything you could think of, washing and ironing clothes, waiting tables, making beds, sewing, whatever she could to make money. Long about the time I was 12 years old, she decided the South didn't really offer us any opportunities. She decided to leave Dodge City. She worked real hard, saved up enough money for a train fare for her and my baby sister. They got on the ICC, and they came to Los Angeles, California. She farmed the other 4 of us out to friends and relatives. And every 6 months, she sent for another one. I was the last one to arrive in October 1939. We were all then in California. Still, she worked very hard. She had to take care of 5 kids still, get us through school, which she did. During all this period of time, we always had a roof over our head. We always had food. We always had clothes, and she had to make them herself. We always had clothes. So this picture represents the proudest moment in my life. Not proud because of what I did to me, because I really didn't realize at the time what I did to me. I was proud because I had made her very, very proud of me. I kind of have to let that go before I get my John Boehner moment, so I'm going to move on. This is my class. You count them, you will find out there's 20 of them there. We made the quota. I want to direct your attention to the gentleman standing to the right of the propeller, your right. Tall gentleman standing next to. Guy on the other side is light-skinned, he's dark-skinned. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Yancey Williams. Remember Yancey Williams who filed suit against the federal government back in January of 41? Well, they finally got over being mad at Yancey and let him, he tried to, over and over to the list, and they just kept turning him down, turning him down. Finally in January of 44, they gave up, got over their mad, and let Yancey get into training. So he went through training with us. That arrow, that's me, 19-year-old me. Now, as I said before, there are 20 pilots in this scene. There are only 1 left, and that's me. All 19 of the other guys have passed away through the years. So I'm hanging on as the last survivor of the group. I'd like to call your attention to the gentleman who, in the middle aisle, second from the left. Let's see if this thing works. Oops, I hit the wrong thing. Excuse me. I always do this. There we are. This is what I want. Hey, right there. Not there. His name is Clarence Sugars. Clarence was a very talented individual. He had a beautiful voice. He could sing. He was a very good painter. He also did sculpturing work. Very, very talented young man. Now I get it. Clarence, this is a larger than life statue of a Tuskegee Airman that Clarence did. I've got a miniature over here, so I'll leave it there. Somebody you can get a closer look at it. But this statue is currently embedded in the promenade at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So with that, I'll pass on to the next phase. Back to good old Tuskegee. Pilots have been graduating for a year. The first one graduated in 42, March of 42, if you remember what I said. Now March of 43. We have pilots all over the country. Some of them at Tuskegee, some of them at Selfridge Field, Michigan. Anyway, we got them all over the country. They and all the public and everybody is screaming, why aren't our boys going overseas? When are our guys going to see combat, you know? So the Army got tired of listening to it, so they finally decided they would send a group overseas. The fastest promotion in history. Captain Davis, at the beginning of March, was the captain. He never made major. They skipped that one altogether. So the 1st of April, he made lieutenant colonel. For 30 days, he was a lieutenant colonel. At the end of 30 days, he became a full bird colonel. Now that's probably the fastest elevation in the history of military services. That was so he could command the squadron. They accumulated enough men to make a squadron, the 99th Fighter Squadron, under the command of Benjamin O. Davis Jr., Colonel Benjamin O. Davis Jr., and they shipped off to North Africa with the colonel. They arrived like in Casablanca. They were assigned to, I believe, was the 79th Fighter Group. The commanding officer of the 79th Fighter Group would have no part of it. He wouldn't let them on the field, wanted nothing to do with them. What he did was he went off in the desert a few miles, put up some steel landing strips, put some tents up, and immediately sat down and wrote a letter to the headquarters, sent a memo to headquarters. His memo said these guys were misfits, these people, the 99 were misfits, they couldn't fly formation, and every time the enemy showed up, they cut and ran. Well, that was ironic, because so far they'd never gotten off the ground. They were based at Virginia. They hadn't been able to fly one flight because he would not schedule them on a mission. Well, they called Colonel Davis, and he went back to Washington to explain. If any of you saw the pictures, the Tuskegee Airmen 1 and the Red Tail 2, you will remember seeing the testimony Colonel Davis gave before Congress was so passionate that Congress decided he was right, we were not treated fairly. He changed the group to, I think, the 33rd Fighter Group, where they had a commanding officer who was much more at ease with this. I don't know what his social thinking was, but he would rather win the war than to discriminate. So he did some things. One, the 99th Fighter Squadron went overseas. Not one man in the group had any combat experience. Not one. From the colonel down to cook, nobody had ever been in combat before. And the colonel recognized this. So what he did, first off, was he took the 99th and he formed flights with 2 of his men and 2 of the 99th pilots. And they went out on several missions for 2 or 3 days. When he was satisfied that they could take care of themselves, he sent them back and he released them, started scheduling missions for them, and the fight was on. Now, all of what I just told you from the time Colonel Davis made colonel to this point only consumed 2 months, the months of April and May. We're in the 1st of June now, 1942. And, 43, excuse me, 1943. The 3rd day out, the fellow by the name of Charlie Hall was the first African American to shoot down an enemy airplane. From that point on, our group was making a name for themselves continuously. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the old Tuskegee Army Airfield, more pilots were graduating. They got pilots coming out of the air they didn't know what to do with. They decided to form 3 more groups, 100, the 301st, and the 302nd, which constituted the 332nd Fighter Group. Brought Colonel Davis back, this was January of 44, brought Colonel Davis back. He took command of the group, and back overseas they went. But they didn't go to North Africa. They went to Italy, to a field in Ramitelli, Italy. Now they had their own field, completely their own field. The 99th came over and joined them, and the Black Air Force was born. All heck broke loose from that point on. First month they were over there, they were flying jugs, P-47s, and doing dive bombing and ground and strafing missions. After about the first month, the Air Corps was losing so many bombers, they decided they needed some help in bomber escort. So they gave the 332nd some P-51s, gave enough P-51s to serve the group, and they started seriously doing bomber runs. And this is what they did basically until the end of the war. Now, I haven't taken you that far There are some stories, if I can make my little goody work here. There are some stories I like. There's a whole bunch of stories, but I'm only going to tell you 3 of them, so I won't keep you here too long. First one. My mentor was a fellow by the name of Wendell Pruitt. Wendell served his time overseas, got his missions in, came back to Tuskegee just as I was graduating and getting my 10 hours of fighter transition in the P-40. He was my flight leader. So I got this one from the horse's mouth, basically. They were coming back, this was early in the war, they were coming back off of sortie. Now a sortie is when you go out looking for trouble. You don't have a mission particularly, so you're going out looking for trouble. Now they've been out, couldn't find trouble. On their way back, they had to cross the Mediterranean. And you never want to come back with all the ammunition in the cans. You know, that eliminates bragging rights. So you always want to find something to shoot at. So Wendell says that they crossed the Mediterranean. They were crossing the Mediterranean. They spotted at Trieste. They spotted a German destroyer in the harbor at that place. Well, he said, you know, they really didn't have any serious thoughts about doing anything. They're just going to shoot up the German destroyer and, you know, and harass the people. Well, he said on his second pass, as he pulled up, he looked back, and he saw his, actually as he was doing his run, he saw his tracers go into the deck of the destroyer, and there was a small explosion. As he pulled away and looked back, this small explosion that blew a hole in the deck obviously went down into the hole where there's some serious munitions. They blew the destroyer in half and it sunk right there in the harbor. Now I testify, folks, that's the only time in history that a fighter plane has sunk a destroyer. It never happened before, it never happened again. Second, we have a pilot, both Bob and I know, by the name of Roscoe Brown. During the later stages of the war, the Germans were highly technically capable. They did some really good technical things. They were the first one to produce a jet-powered combat aircraft. It was called the ME-262. ME-262 was a good airplane. It had a couple of good points and a couple of bad points. Good points was it could dive and it was fast. If it got in front of you, you never were going to catch it. That was number one. Bad points was it couldn't climb safely. At slow air speeds, it would flame out. And it had the turning radius of the 747, which didn't make it good. Roscoe caught ME-262 in a climbing turn, and that was the end of that 262. Now the story I got is Roscoe Brown, an African American, was the first man in history to shoot down a jet-powered airplane. Wow. So we have a little something going for us there. Our basic mission was bomber escorts, and we did that very well. The problem was when as you probably heard a number of times, our guys flew over 200 missions and never lost a bomber to enemy fighters. There's questions about that, but we happen to know the truth of the matter is pretty much. In warfare, fighter pilots have tunnel vision. See airplane, shoot airplane down, you know, nothing in between. Well, what happens, the Germans would staff over us, over the group, and they would send the first wave down, and the planes would go off chasing so they could shoot them down. The second wave would come down and shoot up our bombers. Well, B.O. Davis was a brilliant military mind, and he understood that wasn't going to work. So he instructed all the pilots of the 332nd Fighter Group. When the first wave came down, you let them go. You stay with the bombers. You did not attack an enemy unless they were threatening the bombers. That way, we pretty much got away with not losing any bombers. With all of that activity, you know there's going to be data. So if this thing works properly, that's the end of, I didn't show you the bombers, excuse me. And the heart's going to throb here, showing that the guys in the bombers, after a while, began to love us because we were doing a good job of protecting them. Okay, data. There were 992 original airmen. There were actually 996, but four of them were not Americans. 2 Haitians and 2 Puerto Ricans who trained with us as observer pilots. 992. 450 went overseas, 66 died overseas. In addition to the 66 that died, 30 of our guys became prisoners of war. The good news is, when the war was over, all 30 of our guys returned home. We didn't lose anybody as a prisoner of war. 332nd destroyed 136 aircraft in the air, 273 on the ground, plus they destroyed 126 locomotives. Now, destroying locomotives is not glamorous. You think, who wants to, take credit for it? But if you remember, an army travels on its stomach. If you can't get your supplies, logistically, you are in bad shape. So those locomotives were important. Flew 1,578 missions. In addition, we flew 15,553 sorties. Commendations, you betcha. 1 Legion of Merit, 1 Silver Star, 2 Soldier Medals, 4 Purple Hearts, 14 Bronze Stars, 150 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 750 Air Medals with Oak-Leaf Clusters, and 1 Presidential Citation. Now, I submit to you folks, that's not too shabby for a group of men who lack the intelligence and the courage and the manual skills to fly combat aircraft. Okay, there's a great deal more to go, but I'm going to keep you much longer. I'll give you a quick. The war ended. Our guys came home. There were no ticket parades for us. We still couldn't rent a room in a hotel. We still couldn't go in the front door in a restaurant. Still couldn't drink at the fountain. Still had to ride on the back of the bus and the front of the train. The irony of the front of the train was I, as an officer in the United States Army, was riding in the coal car when the German prisoners of war being repatriated back to Germany were riding in the middle of the train with everybody else. So I say that wasn't particularly nice. So what, in essence, I'm saying is we came back to the same country that we left. We went over and made a difference for somebody else, and we come home, nothing had really changed. At that moment it had. After that, several things happened. 1948, remember Harry Truman, who was speaking for us when we wanted to get the base? He desegregated the military services, which was a bold move on his part. Now, we didn't instantly become colorblind. It took a while, maybe about 10 years. But basically, the military was the first colorblind entity that we had in this country. 1949, another incident happened. We didn't find out about this particular thing for 50 years. But all of you folks saw the movie Top Gun, and you think Tom Cruise won the first Top Gun meet. Well, I'm here to tell you he didn't. The first Top Gun was in Reno in 1949 was won by 4 African Americans flying P-47s. James Harvey, Harry Shepard, I believe it was, Halvard Alexander, and Ivins, I believe was the other name. We didn't find this out until sometime in '95 when some lady found a trophy at some Air Force base, someplace in this country. Recognizing what it was, she turned it over to us. Now I have something I want to do here I wouldn't normally do. After the war was over, I went home, couldn't get a job at the airline, so I opened up my own flying business on the Compton Airport. I had Rusty's Flying Service on the Compton Airport. I did everything you do with flying service. I was executive pilot. I did training. I was an instructor. I did maintenance, sales, and everything else. And I also did air shows. This is during the '65. This particular one, I don't normally show it, but it's about 2 years ago. You'll see there's a lady on the wing, flying on the wing. Her name is Betty Arquette. Now, I didn't know that for 50 or 60 years. 2 summers ago, my wife got a call from some young man back in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He said he wanted to know if he had the residence of Rusty Burns, who used to have a flying service in Compton. And my wife said yes. He said, well, my mother flew on a wing with your father, with your husband, back in those days. She's been telling people that for 50 years and nobody believes her. So she's got a birthday coming up in a few days, and I would like for you to call on her birthday when she has all the guests around, all of her friends around, and affirm that she did in fact fly on a wing, which I did, which I cannot tell you. Baby didn't come off the ceiling for probably a week or two, and we're still in Compton. Now this particular event in 1965 was a 3-day event, and the promoters of the show didn't quite know how to get, so they advertised in the paper for girls who wanted to get on the wing. Well, you'd think there'd be 2 or 3. There were 100 girls that applied for that job. The producers reduced them down to 10, gave them to me. You know, you can't imagine the bribes I got for the next few days. Those 10 girls, every one of them. I had to choose 3, which I did, and we did the air show, of which Betty was one of those. Now I'm going to pass on for a number of years to March 29th, 2007. 300 of us, Bob included, assembled in the Capitol building. I don't want to see that. There we are. 300 of us in this building for the purpose of being awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Right in the middle here someplace, if I can push the right button. That's President Bush and Nancy Pelosi right there. That arrow is pointing. That's me. It took my kids a month to find me. But anyway, that's me. Anyway, the president got on the stage with Roscoe Brown and Lee Archer, and he said some nice words about us, reminding everyone that we had the record of not losing any bombers, which whenever anybody congratulates us for our service, that's the first thing they bring up, is not losing any bombers. But anyway, and he awarded us the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor. This is the highest award Congress can issue to civilians at that time. Now there's only one Congressional Gold Medal of Honor. It's 13 ounces of solid gold. Well, you can imagine we didn't all get 13 ounces of solid gold. What they did was they created a replica, which is also on this table. As a matter of fact, I'll show it to you. Here we go. This is both sides of that medal. The front side, you got 3 men on it. The first one's a pilot, the second one is a mechanic, and the third one is bombardier navigator people. They have 3 of the 5 airplanes we flew on there. We had the P-40, the P-51, and the B-25. We also flew the P-39 and the P-47. Wasn't enough room to put all of them on there. So this we got, and the original went into the Smithsonian. So if you ever get to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, you will see that original 13 ounces of solid gold, which is now $12 an ounce. I think at the time it might have been 19, so it was pretty high. Normally I won't talk about the Red Tail movie. I'm sure most of you have seen that. So this is going to end the program. Hopefully I haven't kept you here too long, and hopefully you enjoy the program. We don't go any place. We're going to have Bob's birthday party in a minute. Thank you very much for coming. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Rusty. I think you folks would agree, an outstanding presentation. Thank you once again, Rusty. Now, before we all kind of break up, like Rusty mentioned, we have some extra fun today. Of course, we have a birthday cake for the Colonel's 96th birthday. Well, it's at the end of the month, right? So technically, you're 29th, you're 24 years old today? Younger than I am. He looks it, too. I've also got another surprise today, and I want to give that surprise to Rusty. We're going to fly the P-51, and Rusty, would you like to go for a ride? Would you like to go for a ride in the 51 today? We're going to send Rusty up in that P-51 today. So we've got a great plan going on.
Here comes our P-63, the King Cobra. Very, very rare airplane. Maybe the only one flying in the world right now. Being flown by Patrick Nightingale. Gonna bring her in, and there she's shut down. That is a very rare airplane.
Rusty, when's the last time you were in a 51?
Now, the other thing we want to do is we want to say
1965,
thank you, Planes of Fame.
My last 51 in 65.
And Tom Nightingale, who's walking over there to the
P-40
P-63,
and the
for bringing out that
Where was that?
P-40. Thank you, Planes
That
of
was an
Fame.
air
We
show,
appreciate
Chino.
it.
I got it.
You got it?
I got all in and out of these things for a number of years.
Hey, you, how's it going? Right on.
Thank you, buddy.
Can we get a picture of the two pilots? Can we get a picture of you two together?
Good old days. I forgot what it was like.
Right here, please. Big smiles right here. Okay. Come here, Louie. No. Okay, right here when you're done. Right here.
Okay, we're looking.
Right here, thank you.